All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone who's joined us so far. Thanks for hopping on. My name's Catherine Ruiz. I'm an architect at Dillon Kyle Architects in Houston, and I am the 2022-2023 chair of the Texas Code Committee. Today's presentation is through AIA Houston, and it's supported by the AIA Houston Design Awards Committee and the Houston Code Committee. And today's topic will be the AIA Framework for Design Excellence, as well as the closely related Common App tool. Joining us today are speakers Chris Mundell and Beth Brandt, both out of Dallas. Chris is a project manager and lead fellow at Park Hill, as well as the vice chair of the Texas Code Committee. And he'll be talking to us today about the Framework for Design Excellence. Beth Brandt is an associate principal and director of sustainability with DSG and Associates, and she's also a member of the AIA National Code Subcommittee. She'll be speaking to us today about the Common App tool, which is a form that will be used in your submission to the Design Awards. Please note, if you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and place those questions in the chat, and we'll go through them at the end during our Q&A session. I'll go ahead and kick things off briefly. Chris or Beth, if you want to go to the next slide. I'll go ahead and introduce the Code Committee. I think we have a couple more slides to go here. There's us. We are members of the Code Committee. I believe that's the next slide. For those who are not familiar with the AIA Code group, COAT stands for the Committee on the Environment. Here in Houston, we have our own local AIA Houston Code Committee. There's also a Code Committee at the Texas state level. And finally, there's an overall AIA National Code group. There are many useful tools that have been put together for the architecture and design community at the Code National level, which you can find on the National AIA website. And among these tools, you'll find the Framework for Design Excellence, one of the newer guides to sustainable and well-rounded design. Yeah. Next. Yes, thank you. All three of us, Chris, Beth, and myself have all been part of the Texas Code Committee, which is a fairly new group. We kicked off our group in 2021 with Beth as our chair. And as you can see in our mission statement, the TXA Committee on the Environment, or COAT, works to advance and advocate the design of sustainable, resilient, healthy, and equitable communities through public policy, outreach to the general public, and educational opportunities for the building industry. So our goal today as a group is to help you all become more familiar with the framework and the Common App. We'll run through the tool and we'll answer some common questions that have come up since the form became a part of the Design Award submission. If you have any questions on the form during your Design Award submission, you please feel free to go ahead and reach out to the AIA Houston Design Awards chair or the committee, and they will be sending any Common App related questions our way so that we can help answer them. So now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris, who will introduce the framework.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So if you're not familiar with it, please definitely look it up. It's on the AIA website. We won't get in too much into the history of it, but it's something, again, that a lot of us are looking at and using on our projects and in our designs more and more these days. And so definitely encourage you to look at it if you're not familiar with it. It's basically this idea about, hey, what's just good design, right? This is not like a scorecard, like a program like LEED, where you have to submit points and get certification and pay and all that. This is not that. This is, again, as architects and designers and others, people in the industry, about just a framework for good design, right? That's really what we're trying to do, really trying to encourage. There's really kind of 10 measures or 10 principles that were created for this. You can see them listed there. And the thought is I would kind of run through maybe just, again, one slide for each of these to kind of give you a very brief overview of what they are. Definitely encourage you to take time to go to the website and learn a lot more about them. The website also has resources, more information, all that kind of stuff. But the goal of this presentation is for me just to make you familiar with it. And then again, Beth will show you how it's, pulled into the Common App to use. So I'll just go through each one real quick. So again, the first one is integration. Hopefully we all understand that when we start our projects is that really working as a team is critical for projects, right? And for good design, right? Bring in all the key stakeholders, start from the beginning, and really figure out what's the goal of the project, what makes sense, how is this project going to work out, and set those goals, set those strategies, look at the triple bottom line, the social aspects, the economy, and more importantly, the environmental piece to all this. So really, again, start strong and come up with some great ideas, some concepts, and use the integrated project approach to really kick the project going. Second measure, again, really addressing our communities, right? A lot of us are working on these projects that have an impact on our community. One way, shape, or form, they're going to. And so again, we really try to encourage, designers and team members to really look at the community, talk to them, see about what, the goals of this project can do to, impact or have some type of support for that local community. Look at ways for getting to the site, again, alternative transportation to get there versus only car, accessibility, all that kind of stuff is important when we're placing our building or our project on the site and in that community. The third measure, again, obviously addressing the ecosystem, right? Everything that we do has an impact on our environment. And so it's so important for us to really take that into consideration when doing that, right? Look again at the existing site that you're using. Is it pre-developed? Is it a grass field? See about how that, again, can affect your project. When you start laying out the site and the landscaping and all the planting and all that, again, especially here in Texas, let's look at native and adaptive plants, right? We don't want to use something that's not going to grow well or going to take a lot of water to get there. So really trying to do our best with that. And then lastly, obviously, is looking at lighting. There's so many times we want to light up the site so much for security purposes and advertising and all that, and rightfully so. Again, we want the place to be safe, but let's again be careful of what is happening at nighttime and making sure that the light levels are best. Next measure, design for water. Again, we all know and understand how important water is these days, and making sure that we reduce our potable water use and really try to address runoff on the site, right? These are all things you're working with your landscape architect, your plumbing engineers, your civil engineers, all those people to kind of address both the outdoor water and the indoor water. Let's look at, water sense label fixtures for our indoor stuff. Let's look at ways to reduce our water use. Can we reduce our outdoor water use? I know sometimes it's tough not to use irrigation water for our landscaping, but can we at least reduce it if we can't eliminate it? And then addressing runoff, right? There's so many times we have a lot of heavy storms and just the whole site gets flooded with water, right? Whether it's the pavement, the landscaping, or whatever. So again, we have to look at those options to take into consideration. Next slide so that's this one about economy, right, is right sizing your project. I know sometimes as architects and designers, we want to have this huge building with all these things and all that, but especially nowadays with the construction costs being so expensive and so critical, can we right size our project? Can we design it to be a little bit more efficient? Again, maybe tighten up the square footage, talk to the client about, do you really need this? Do you really need that? And that way, again, we're putting the lowest or the least amount of footprint in our site, and obviously, hopefully for the best, cost that's possible. If possible, can we also reuse an existing building versus building new, right? Some of the most sustainable projects are reusing versus building brand new. So look at all that. And then lastly, even looking at the amount of materials, sometimes we want to show 6 different materials on the exterior envelope, which might be great design, but again, could it be done with 3, just something like that. We're not saying it has to be all one, but can you, again, look at the less of the material impact would be less on the resources and all that good stuff. Measure 6, design for energy. We all understand that energy is a key part of our projects, right? Our building envelopes, our mechanical systems, our lighting, all that stuff contributes to the energy use. And then obviously our dependence on fossil fuels until renewables are fully provided. So again, when you start your project, can you set a EUI, energy use intensity goal? Can you benchmark to see what existing projects of your similar project type in a similar location are doing? Again, if you're doing office, what's the EUI for that versus a hospital? And can you say, hey, based on this, let's design our project to meet or do better than those benchmark numbers. Let's look at lighting power density, especially also if you're doing interior finish out where maybe you can't control some of the envelope or the MEP systems. Let's look at window to wall ratio. We all like windows to see outside, but obviously, can we reduce the amount of glass we have if it's not needed? Let's look at passive strategies, right? Building shape, orientation, how it sits on the site, what the glass locations are for the west or the east side. All those key things are important to reduce our energy use. And then lastly, again, is start looking at that energy performance with energy modeling. And we're not talking about like a lead energy model that you do at the end and say, oh, we got 20% reduction. Let's use the modeling at the beginning and say, here's 3 options, or here's 3 mechanical systems. And how can our energy modeling, show the client, if you do this system with this design, this is going to be your best bet for energy savings. So that way you have the data and the proof to show that your design is justified. So all good stuff for that. And obviously the last thing is looking at the opportunity for renewable energy uses. Again, solar panels on the building roof, solar panels like here on the canopies over parking. They're all great strategies to use. And the cost of solar has come down so much over the years and definitely becomes more efficient to use. Okay, measure number 7, design for well-being. So again, this one is so critical because we all understand that, again, whatever the percentage is, 90% of everybody's indoors most of the time these days, right? And so our indoor spaces are so important about being healthy, right? And not struggling to be inside with what's going on in there. So again, providing a comfort level for everybody is important. That could be individual controls where you have lighting controls or thermal controls for your space. Not always easy sometimes when you have open office floor plans, but again, when you have other options, can you look at that? This idea about being connected to nature, the biophilic aspect of it, really, we all want to be either looking outside or we want to be outside. And so if you can't be, how do you still relate to that? These are all important pieces. And one of the things that we're seeing more and more nowadays is acoustical issues, right? So again, offices, schools, hospitals, all those spaces where there's so much noise going on, how do you reduce that noise volume, or use materials and designs to help address it better? So that we all, if we're focusing on something, we can concentrate and not be, struggling to hear everything because of the noise around our space. Yeah. Measure 8. So resources, again, it's so important as architects and probably interior designers about the materials that we select, right? It could be envelope materials, it could be indoor finishes. All that stuff is important. And we really want to make sure that we're selecting the best materials. They could be the local materials. They could be, again, addressing the chemicals of concern. Are there certain materials we should maybe not be using in a hospital setting, that's causing cancer or has concerns for cancer? All those kind of things we need to take into consideration. A big discussion these days, even more nowadays, is carbon, especially embodied carbon, right? Looking at the life cycle assessment of the materials from where it's extracted, manufactured, and then brought to our site and used, and then maybe possibly reused, are all important pieces to this. So again, we want to dive in more than just saying, oh, we'll use the typical 3 materials we've always used. Let's look at this a little bit closely and say maybe what's more sustainable or better options for our client to consider for our resources and our material selections. Measure 9, so change. So this idea, again, is we have to be adaptive. We have to be flexible. We have to be resilient, right? We all understand that, again, we want our building to sit there for 50 years and to make it through every tornado, hurricane, earthquake, whatever else is happening, right? So again, it has to stand the test of time, but there's also times too where it has to be flexible, right? A lot of clients sometimes are changing out their space, or someone moves out and someone else moves in. And so the less construction waste, the less use of new materials are all helpful if we have some flexibility built in. It could be room for expansion. It could be flexibility within the space. All those things should be looked at. Do a risk assessment. Again, look at everything to say, hey, what happens if we do get hit by a storm? What are some options? How do we stay, with power for the next 24 hours or something like that? Look at all those things, take into consideration, because if you turn on the news every morning, there's always a storm, right? There's always something going on. There's always some type of climate events. And so it's more and more out there, and we have to be flexible and adaptive for it. How am I doing on top? Okay. And so the last measure is 10, design for discovery, right? One of the things or 2 things to this, really. One of the things is we love to basically show off what we've done, right? And we want the users and the occupants of the building to understand and enjoy the spaces. And again, maybe there's a way for them to discover as they walk through the space. And there's some signage or education things that says, here's what we did for sustainability, or here's what we did for good design. So that's always a great thing to show. We also want to do a post-occupancy evaluation if possible, right? Let's learn from our mistakes. We all want repeat clients, right? We all want to do that next project with the client. And the only way that we're going to do that best is if we learn from them, right? Is to take the lessons learned and make it better. You're going to do the first hospital for the city of Dallas, and then you're going to do the second hospital or fire station, whatever. And you want to take those lessons learned to see, hey, here's what we did right, and here's maybe what we didn't do right. And so how do we make that better for the next time? It also might help you with your strategies. Again, if you can show, utility bills and all that, and an actual UI versus a design UI to say, hey, look, we are saving 15% energy, but we're not saving the 20% that we thought we would. So how can we get the next one to get to 20%? So all these things, again, I know sometimes we finish a project, construction's done, and we just want to walk off and move on to the next one. But sometimes just sticking around for a little bit longer is going to be really helpful for your next one. So again, look at that, discover yourself, and discover as well for, for the people that are using the space. So I know I went through this pretty quickly. Again, hopefully that helped you at least give you an idea of what we're thinking. But I definitely encourage you to spend more time to look at all that and kind of learn more about it.
Yeah, the website's really great because they have case studies, they have tools, and a lot of it's stuff we learned during our career and in school, right? But it's just challenging everybody to think about sustainability on a holistic, broad scale. A lot of times when you hear that word, you think solar panels or something like that, but this is showing, good design really is, or excellent design is really synonymous with sustainable design.
Yep. Okay, I think the next slide is, yep.
So that's where we're at. Okay, so trying to figure out how we start this. A few years back, as the Common App was coming out, there were several people in National working on the application, or the common application, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it was also talking about how, what we were just saying, that great design is also sustainable, and that how can we look at this and simplify the process, and allow a way for jurors to not just see the beautiful projects that everyone's created and judge those, but also have an understanding, at least a basic understanding, of how the building is performing. Catherine, feel free to jump in here too. So why the reasons are some of the, such as the national initiative that, AIA National has stated that the climate crisis is a priority for our institute. And one of the actions is creating this Common App, among many other things. Some of when we were working for, when we were on the TXA COAT committee, and Catherine and Crystal are, the jurors were coming to the Design Awards committee and asking, can you do this? So we've been getting recommendations and asks for jurors themselves to include the Common App in the Design Awards. Big SIBS has made it a strategic goal, and it's also a priority of the chapter. Catherine, if you want to elaborate on any of those.
Yeah, Big SIBS is a group of some of the AIA local chapters, some of the larger chapters. They meet fairly regularly, and over the last few years, sustainable design and design excellence really became a priority. So that was incorporated into one or two written documents that were put out as a future mission of this particular group, and a lot of the support for the framework for the design excellence and therefore the Common App came from this. So if you are a part of a larger local chapter such as Houston or some of the others in Texas or even throughout the country, more than likely the head of your chapter is either signed off or was aware of this prioritization of sustainable excellent design.
Yeah. Oh, and we mentioned it, but Big SIBS just stands for like the larger components around the nation. So AIA Houston, Dallas, New York City, all of those kind of components. You want me to go through this one too, Kathy?
Sure, and I can jump in.
Okay. What you should know. So one, that the Common App is part of the submission requirement for AIA Houston this year. The second one is to fill it and as best as you can, fill in everything. But if it doesn't apply to you, obviously, you don't have to worry about that. So that's basically what we're trying to say about that one. As you'll see when I run through this, that there's all the data is easily accessible. There's links on the sides. So it's all easy to, if you don't know, you probably know almost all of it anyway, because 99% of it you already know from doing your basic code compliance check and that kind of thing. But if you weren't sure, there's links on the side. And then the completion time, there's been a lot of discussion about completion time. I'm in a small firm of 8 people, and we can do this. We do it all the time now as part of our design submissions, and it can really be pretty quick. It doesn't take a lot of time. I've heard some people say 2 hours, which is, once you get familiar with it, 2 to 3 hours. And if you're really stressing about the wordsmithing of the narrative, it might take you 8, but literally that's as long as it should take anyone.
And I'll add to that. What a lot of the chapters, including Houston, have adopted in regards to the Common App, and let me clarify that first. This Common App form has been adopted through local, state, and the national level. So it's, and Beth, you can clarify any of that, but this is becoming a standard. That is the idea behind the form, is that it is a standard. It is the same everywhere, or at least that's the intention, so that when you do submit to, let's say, your state level after submitting to your local level, it's the exact information. So the idea is that it should be incredibly easy for you to just take that and resubmit. And going back to what most of the locations, most of the chapters are doing, is that it is requested that this form be required for every design submission. However, and Beth was clarifying this earlier, if it doesn't apply to your project, you do not have to complete it. This tool is really being focused as additional information for jurors, but it is not something that if you are missing a box or an entry, or there's some aspect that doesn't apply to your project, it is not going to rule you out. And that was never the intention of this form. And ideally, what we are hoping is that this allows submitters and designers to become familiar with elements and aspects of your project to where you are thinking about it next time. So even if it doesn't apply to your submission now, it is something that can help you, at least you'll become more familiar with EUI or any other of the requirements on the form, any other entries on the form rather, to where ideally we all think about this next time we design our next project.
That's a great point. Other items to demystify the Common App is some people think it's an app like on your phone or something. I think it's just short for application. It's literally an Excel spreadsheet. It's mostly yes or no questions. There's opportunities to write narratives, but the way the spreadsheet works, and I'll show you in a minute, writing a narrative, we encourage everybody, we ask you to at least put in some bullet points or something, but the way it's designed is there's a quick spider graphic that shows that. And then if the jurors want to read more about it, that's where you can to really explain more about your project. And then there's only one, no, just that there's only one calculation, and I'll explain that part in a little bit.
And I'll just add on to that as well. For AIA Houston, we worked very closely with submitters last year to get feedback from a more diverse group of submitters, residential, very small project, small commercial, And we were hoping to get some feedback as to how the forum was addressing their needs. Comments were made that, maybe certain entries didn't feel like they applied to certain types of projects. We really encourage you to provide feedback because this is a live document and those that are managing it are constantly updating it every year. And the narrative portions that Beth was just addressing are a great opportunity. If there's something that's not included in the form, but you believe is a sustainable aspect of your project, please use that narrative location to list it out and describe. That is really what they're being used for at this time. And we want to make sure everyone gets in as much information on their design as possible.
Thank you. We also just wanted to highlight that Houston is now one of the leaders. Sorry, this isn't showing up right. One of the leaders. So some of the first states and cities to adopt the Common App as part of their requirements are listed here, El Paso including. So I think that's pretty exciting. And then there's going to be resources, if they're not already online, there will be all these available for you to. All right, so we got a good time here. So what I'm going to do is, this is what the Common App looks like. This is what the current version, which is version that will be available to download, is version 2023.1. And you can just tell because it has this black background. It's a little bit different. So if you're working on one that's got a red background, that's an old one, you need just go download the new one. And as Catherine was saying, so I'm on the subcommittee for the Common App, which is AIA National Subcommittee, and we value everyone's feedback. What we've been doing is any comments that we get, technical or in general, we're taking those and we're considering them. And we'll make the tweaks. If there's a technical issue, we'll make that right away. And all the other general comments, we review those and we consider them as we update for next year. All right, just a second.
And Beth's going to go into the actual app or the spreadsheet so you can kind of see how it works live.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to show you what it looks like just when you open it up. So I kind of have two here. So this is what it looks like when you open it up. It should just have this little white line that goes straight up and down. And as you see, the gray boxes are where you should input the information. White boxes will automatically fill out, so you don't have to worry about those. And then these are new, the little down tabs, that just tells you that this is where you would tabulate down, that it's not a write-in part, that there's something for you to tab and scroll down and look at. And just familiarizing you with the overall app. There's links on the right everywhere as you scroll down. So if it asks you something such as, is your firm submitting signatory of the 2030 commitment? And maybe you're not aware of the 2030 commitment. So you come over here and click the link and it tells you more about it. And another just feature about this is that the measures or the principles, they completely align with what Chris just went through. So the design framework and the Common App are totally aligned. So if you ever wanted to understand more about design for integration, you click that and it takes you straight to the website, and it has all the updated information. National's constantly kind of updating this, giving new case studies, best practices, resources, etc. So maybe you don't know, for example, what do they mean by design for integration? Sometimes I forget too, and I want to go and I can kind of understand a little bit more. So that helps you when you're writing your narratives, kind of figure out what to pinpoint as well. Okay, so now that we're gonna dive into this a little bit more. So no project is perfect, but just so you understand what this spider graphic is about, it's measuring as you input data here. So a perfect project would be a perfect decagon. And this is a way for the jurors to just visually kind of get a glance on how your project is performing or will be performing. So you can see this isn't a perfect project. This is an actual project. It's called Awesome Architect Project with #1 client. No, but it's a real project with some data from our office. So you can see we did really well on like integration and energy, but water we could have done a little better. So like everybody, we're learning as we go. So this just gives you an idea, and the jurors an idea of like how your project's performing. So what you do at the beginning is you just kind of.
And Beth, real quick, I would just chime in again that maybe there was a reason why the water wasn't a perfect one. It doesn't mean it was a bad project. It just maybe, again, wasn't a strategy you could incorporate, or had a huge cost for, small site. You couldn't collect rainwater on the site. You couldn't do a cistern or anything like that. Again, doesn't mean it was a bad project or it didn't care about water, just couldn't make that strategy work.
Right. Good
And
point.
that's, again, something that you can kind of clarify as well if it's for the reviewer.
Mm-hmm. I think that's where the narrative really comes into play too. So, and you guys just keep jumping in as you want, Chris and Catherine. So you basically just fill in the basic information. You find your climate zone. This one was in Dallas, so it's 3A, but you would go to the ASHRAE map here and find or click in your zip code, and it will tell you automatically. It will tell you on that link what climate zone you're in. So just in case you don't know, that's all available for you on the right. The next is typing in your building type and the approximate percentage. So this one was 100% office, but as you can see, there's quite a bit of options here. Okay, so what I would say is if it doesn't fall into this, find something that would perform similarly. And then it should add up to 100% at the bottom. So maybe it's, half office, half storage, those would add up, right? Again, the little arrow just reminds us to tab down. So there's renovation, new construction, and interior only. How many stories, per square footage, all that basic information. Your estimated of like normal use hours and your occupancy. So that will automatically, based on the year and everything, the white box, again, there's nothing to write in, they will automatically calculate that. So from the year that it was permitted, it knows from the 2030 challenge that the goal is to do 70% reduction. It's asking if our firm or your firm is a signatory of the 2030 commitment. If so, do you submit your projects on the DDX website? And did the project receive a third-party rating system? So last year, this project hadn't received a third-party rating system. So I had to say no, but I did still type in, that it's in the way. Then the first principle, the first measure, design for integration. As you remember, it's kind of asking, was the big picture thought about from both beauty and function and balance when you're in the initial design? And we had kind of reached out to the community a lot during this process, and so we got to explain some of that. And what it's doing here is it's in gray, in the gray italics, it's asking you or prompting you what to write in that narrative. So I won't go through all of those, but there's basically 3 prompts where it's asking you to explain.
Yeah, and there's no minimum or maximum.
I think there's maximum 200 words. Let me
There's no minimum.
back to that other one.
You can write one sentence, say we did this and that's it, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a novel.
Where is that? Sorry, I gotta
I
move.
couldn't remember if there was a max, but
I just want to check. 200, yeah, I think there are 200 words max.
okay.
And as Chris said, so the way that the tabulations and the decagon and spider graphic work, You can write one word, you can write a dot, or you can write 200 words. It's not going to affect that spider graphic. It's a way for the jurors to understand more about your project. Okay. So keep it on scrolling down. The next one is for equitable communities. How engaged did you engage the community during the design process? And in this particular case, we engaged them quite a lot. So I explained that. There's a link over here that explains what these words mean, but they're fancy words. But basically, it's like, did you not need to engage them? That would be the basic one. Or did you go all the way to letting them design it and telling you what exactly needs to be in that building? So that's a spectrum here. And then aside from that, in your own firm opinion, does the project benefit the people who are not directly associated with the project? So the community around your project. The next part is about mobility and access. And these are all calculated straight from your project's address. So maybe you don't have control over this, but it's something that, you know, if you get a chance at times to help your client pick their site, this is something that you could think about. Again, it's not a strong indicator, but it helps if you are in a more urban zone, or if you have good access to bike trails and transit. So what you do is you click on that link, you just type in your address, and it tells you, and you just translate that numbers across into the Excel sheet. So then the next portion is ecosystems. And I probably have to go a little bit quicker so we don't run out of time, but you basically, again, these are all drop downs. So you can just answer yes or no, is it urban, rural, that kind of thing. And the same for water. They're yes or no questions. You have to make sure you read them, because actually some of them are no is a good thing and yes is bad. So it makes all yeses isn't like a great thing.
Yeah, don't pick all yeses.
And just reminding everyone that the link, if you want to understand more about any of these, this one will take you, straight to the water. So maybe I want to explain a little bit better as to what we did do for this project. So then I can understand a little bit more here, go back and explain that in the narrative. Economy, the white cells here were automatically generated from the information you put up in the basic project information. There's opportunities to explain how you right-sized your building, a couple yes or no questions on affordability and whether it's designed for multiple purposes. Okay, and then we're getting down to energy. And this is the one I think people have the most concerns about. Again, it's really not too complicated. You write, basically most everything is from the energy code that you already had to do when you were submitting for permit or that kind of thing. So in this case, we were under the IE, the Energy Code 2015. For your benchmark can be easily found with the zero tool. That was also at the top. Let me just scroll up to the top real quick. When you're typing in your energy, if you don't know how to find your baseline EUI, it's right here under zero tool. It's super easy. You just type in what your building's about, basically this information right here. It will give you your baseline EUI, energy use intensity. Gotta find myself where to go.
You won't know.
A little bit more. Okay. And then from there, it will estimate your base. The white part is estimating your EUI just from a code standpoint. Yep. Okay. So it does the work for you, is what I'm trying to say. And then if you had a chance to model your project, do an energy model, whether in-house or with your engineer, it's asking, did you do that? If you've collected any actual utility bills and you're keeping track of the EUI from those, you could put that. And if not, don't worry, you just do the energy code, say none energy code. And we, on this particular project, we did several energy models, some in-house, some with the engineers, and it was a lead project. So I just used the energy model from the lead project and figured out the EUI. So if you've done an energy model, you're going to know your EUI. It's basically just the kBTUs per square foot per year. That gives you your number. Generally, the lower the better, but like it's all over the map as far as like, is 12 really good or is 1 really good? It just depends on what your project is doing and what it's for. So, 12 is better than 50, is lower than 54. So that's good. If I say it wasn't modeled, and because I know a lot of us are still learning how to do this. And it says EUI gross right here, and you don't know what to type because you didn't do an energy model. You type in 54, you type in whatever that spit out, right? That's all you got to do for that. So what it's doing is it's taking the energy code and it's giving an approximation of where that is better than an average building in 2003 for your project. So for example, if your baseline was 100 and you didn't do an energy code and you're under the IECC 25, then your baseline, then your actual or your estimated EUI is going to be 55. And that's just because it's 45% better than it was. The codes themselves are 45% better than they were in 2000, 2003. Let me change that back because we worked so hard. I don't remember what it was, 12? 12. Okay. Then it's asking if you had on-site renewables, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of fun just to see, yeah, we met the 2030 challenge. The next, that's really it for energy. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Chris?
Oh, no, you got about 5 more minutes.
Okay, great. I'll scroll through these next ones. So the next ones are yes or no questions for well-being, opportunities to write about that. It asks about chemicals of concern. Just so you know, there's tons of information and what it's asking in general. Did you think about any of these things? Did you think about the red list? Did you think about any of those items as you were selecting at least some of your material selection? The next part is design for resources. Again, it's a lot of yes or no questions. It's did you conduct a life cycle analysis? So, we hadn't on this one, so we just said no. But we did, reduce glazing. That was a conscious effort in our design. So we tabbed that one. And here's some other options that you can think about as you were looking at your design that may, whether intentional or not, maybe helped you lower your carbon emissions, your embodied carbon. The last portion is, sorry, we're down to 9. So it tells you over here how to estimate your lifespan building. If it was concrete, steel, heavy timber, put 100 years, if it was like giant solid stone, then you put 1,000. I don't think people are going to do that. Just quick on this drop down. Did you design for the building to remain in use, to remain useful during a short-term utility power? So as we all know, there's different reasons why we may lose power these days. And so will your building to be able to be inhabitable during those times? In this case, we were able to say yes, of passive survivability. But if you have a generator or if you have renewables with battery, that's even better. And the last one is some basic questions about post-occupancy. Was the survey put out? Were improvements made? That kind of thing. So that is really it, guys. Am I missing anything?
I think you got most of it.
Okay. Well, we have a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, let's go to a few questions that have been put into the chat. I have some additional ones that we can discuss, and then we can, at the end, to open up. If anyone wants to jump on, turn on their microphone, we can do it then. If anyone wants to put in any additional questions in the chat, though, go ahead and do that now, and we'll go through them. One question that was brought up was a statement saying that in a city like Houston, it's known for demolishing their existing buildings. How can we incentivize to gain support? I'm guessing they mean to encourage renovations over new construction. Does anyone want to take that? Maybe Chris?
Yeah, I think Houston's not the only city, I'm sure. I think Dallas has that problem too sometimes. Yeah, I think again, it's tough. I mean, but I think there could be some incentives like maybe again, you get a faster permit if you renovate versus building new. You know, is there a reduction in some costs and fees for processing? You know, all those things can happen, but at the end, it's really still tough to convince people. Everybody thinks new buildings are the best way to do it, and unfortunately not, but it happens. Beth, any other thoughts than that?
I mean, I totally agree. I think a lot of the older buildings, especially before the invention of air conditioning, they were designed passively anyhow. So if we can reuse those, a lot of the time they perform just as well or better. And we had a project, it was an old fire station built in the 50s. And all we looked at, all we had to do was add some insulation to the roof. And we immediately were almost, and with a few solar panels, we were able to get net zero. That's without adding insulation to the walls or even, looking at, was it worth replacing the glass, that kind of thing. So some of them it's really worth looking at. And in the Common App per se, there's a couple options for you to show that it was a renovation, and that when you're looking at the embodied carbon portion, you get points from that, not bonus point, you get points towards your spider graphic.
Great. Another question, which I think will be a good one to address some not much needed clarification on the Common App. The question is that it sounds as though the Common App will narrow the field substantially on opportunity for design awards recognition. If you are a small firm and do not have the billable hours to apply to this data, how does the committee address this? Beth, you want to kick this off?
Sure. Well, like I said, I'm a small firm of 8, and it takes me like an hour to fill this out, and just have to go find the information, even if it's not a project I'm familiar with and I'm just doing it for somebody else. All your comm check or whatever you use to go get your permit, all that information is here. It's a matter of how much you want to sweat about the narratives, I think. And as we explained, like, just do the best you can. You don't have to worry about that. Bullet points or type in one word if it doesn't apply, whatever works.
Yeah, and again, the hope is that once you do it the first time, it's going to be quicker the next time. So there's going to be a learning curve. We understand that the first time, and it's going to take a little bit more time for sure. But I don't think, again, that a small firm should be penalized from this. It's just, again, someone taking a little bit more time to fill it out. And we're here as a resource so that you can get it done still quicker versus, having to guess all on your own. So hopefully it goes by faster.
I agree. And just anecdotally, AIA Dallas was the last year was the first time they had this as a submission requirement, and we had a really good spectrum. Submissions went up, and we had a good broad spectrum of winners. So it doesn't count you out at all. We went from small single family residential to all the way up to I think it was a hospital or something. So a really good range of design awards recognition last year.
And I'll just reinforce this because I think that this is maybe the number one misunderstanding when it comes to the Common App, is that this does not rule you out of the awards. If you are not able to enter in information on some of these cells, that is not going to rule you out of the awards. We probably should just put that really big and bold on our website, but this is not going to be a make it or break it requirement. We just want everyone to look at it for their respective project that they're submitting for, and see what information you are able to apply. And this was never intended and shouldn't be something that takes you 2 or 3 days to fill out. Again, most of this information, or at least the common information, is readily available from what you were needing to submit for permitting. And any additional information that you don't think applies, just put NA. But several winners that we've seen at the state level, which we were able to assist with when it comes to reviewing the common apps after the design awards were released, did a wonderful job. One of them, which I think I can plug because it's available on the TXA website, and I can attach a link actually here. There was a house in Austin, so very small project. I think there was a benefit because the owner was the architect, but he was the only one working on it. Was not LEED certified project, but did such a good job on bringing in holistic and more technologically advanced aspects of sustainability in his home, and the narratives were great. I mean, just talking about using native landscaping, or using a water efficient irrigation system. Things like this, which actually occur very often in our projects today, that kind of information can absolutely be included in this form. So I think you'll be surprised how much your project can use a lot of these entries that can be applied to your project. So again, we are available for questions if you have any. So please go ahead, and if you have any specific questions when you are completing it for your project during the design award submission period, please reach out and send any our way.
Looks like there's another question about the cost remaining the budget confidential, and I think the answer is yes. I mean, it might ding you a little bit on the economy design, right, measure, because it's just not going to show the cost per square foot.
Yeah, I'd have to check, but I don't even know if it dings you. I think you just say that it's confidential.
Yeah, there's a place up there too under client name to remain confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a couple more minutes. Any other questions from the group?
While we see if anyone else wants to put some in, I have some additional questions we can chat about just to give more information. For either one of you, what kind of projects would you say work well with the framework for design excellence? Can kind of be a trick question there.
From my firm, we're working on one that's a great kind of what I would say community project, where again it makes sense. It's involved in the community. It's a wellness center. It's everything that meets all the measures. There's some projects that are developer driven, maybe are more about just building something and getting it done quickly and for less money. And those are sometimes the tougher ones because they're not open to more sustainable strategies. But the ones that are either again very much involved with the community or institutional, where they have to do something based on requirements from their board and all that, those are obviously the easier ones. It's much like LEED. When you have a good client, you can do better certification than those that maybe just don't want to. Beth?
Can I be devil's advocate for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I was going to say that any project could use the design framework excellence, but also this may be a way, if the client's not interested in LEED, this may be a way for your firm or your design team to, how can we still include design sustainable aspects into this project without burdening or without additionally challenging the client to go for LEED or something like that.
No, I agree completely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add into that the way the framework is designed, and I would love for everyone, if they have time after this, visit the website. The link was placed in the chat. It is a very useful tool. Again, what Beth was saying, if you are not going for LEED or even if you are, really any project this can readily apply to, because what the website does is provide ranges of methods and ways of applying all of those measures to a particular kind of project. Or if you can't do this, then here's a very minimally invasive strategy to try to achieve this. So it's very aware that not every project can get 10 out of 10 in all of those categories. So it's very useful to use, how I feel, a baseline tool just for getting a well-rounded project put together. Very useful in early design.
I really like that they have the economy principle, because it does challenge all of us to think about how can we design on a budget and still be effective.
Projects and budget, hey, even so.
It's part of our job.
If anyone would like to either turn on their mic and ask questions or put any additional questions in the chat, you're welcome to do so. I was going to add in one more, but I think we've already briefly touched on it. But how do you all feel the framework compares to other building certifications?
You want to go?
Well, it's definitely a lot easier than a LEED certification, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a framework, right? It's guidelines. So I like it because you don't have to submit, like Chris was alluding, hours and hours of documentation for a LEED project. So I think I like it in that it addresses the whole spectrum of sustainable design. It's not just focused on water, energy. It's thinking about how the community is using it. How can we right size our project? How can we think about long term and flexibility? All the other aspects that create good design.
Again, going back to the website, I think it's great if you have questions on even if you have questions on the Common App. I feel like the framework website has some really great recommendations on how you can achieve a particular measure, and maybe you didn't think about it, that some design method that you applied to the project actually does benefit you in this particular measure. I think it's great if you're trying to figure out what some of those mean, because you might not be thinking about everything that you've actually put into your design. So please check out the framework website. You'll see some example projects on there of a big range of building scale and cost. They also did a very good job at showing anything from a small house to a large institutional project. So I'd highly recommend it if you have additional questions.
Yep.
Beth, Chris, I don't see any other questions coming in. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, I just appreciate everybody taking the time, and happy to be here as a resource.
Same here. Thank you guys so much.
And again, if you have any questions when you're filling out or even following up to this conversation, either reach out to the AIA Houston staff or the Design Awards committee, and they will get us your questions. We'd be happy to help.